Three things that we're going to cover in this video today. One, the ever so loving side of the left. Black man wearing a MAGA hat. Well, not even really a MAGA hat. Just a red hat. Just wearing a red hat. Was just talking to people in a crowd at one of those super peaceful, understanding, love for everybody rallies, and this racist white chick comes up with bunny ears and pours water on him. This is something we see a lot of, but I like to keep showing how, because there was a recent congressperson come on to CNN and said that the people on the right are the ones that are violent and racist and all that. So I'm just going to show you this. I'm just going to keep that narrative rolling. Second is, we've got issues with the Supreme Court, and last but not least, with the recent teenager that committed that terrible crime against the other teenager, deleting his life. Some really serious allegations have been brought to the table about his representative and or attorney, lawyer, legal guy, who just is interested. So stick around, guys, and thank you all for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and the share.
You have your own opinion. Just because.
Hey! Don't do that.
Please, that's just disrespectful.
You should not have done that.
You can't be a mole for them, bro.
What we're looking at here is obviously, when it comes to extremism in this country, I mean, the issue very much so is on the right, on the far right, from Charlottesville to January 6th. There isn't exactly an equivalent on the left in this moment. And as you can see there, as part of our doc, we actually were outside the DC jail on inauguration night when, of course, Trump began pardoning a lot of people who took part in the January 6th riot and people.
So what we were actually looking at was the disgust from the people that were standing outside of the J6 jail thingy, mad because as Trump had given out the pardons, they weren't releasing the inmates like they were supposed to. These people were freed. They were given pardons. They were supposed to leave out. They were using excuses like, oh, there's lots of paperwork to be filed and this, that, and the other. No. When it's time for you to leave, when your release date's there, you roll your stuff. They have a different term for it, but you roll your stuff. You leave, and it took actually weeks for them to get all of them out, and now they're actually being persecuted again in a different way on a state level. And you didn't see anybody out there on that side of the rally doing anything physical to anybody. They just basically were out there speaking with a stern voice. We've witnessed many, 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 many instances where the people on the left resort to some form of physical contact, violence, or just burn the whole place down. And that little dude needs to go back to Ireland, where his whole country's being taken over from a mass form of illegal immigration. Anyways, so let's dig into the whole Supreme Court thing. So check this out. So this is something I've kept up extensively with. I did a great video that was explaining some of the situations at hand when it came to the 65,000 ballots that were questionable, and YouTube would not let me put it up. It gave me a red flag quickly, so I've got to be very careful how I talk about this, but definitely a problem with 65,000 ballots. And the deal is now the Supreme Court of the North Carolina Supreme Court has ruled that most of those ballots will be able to be counted, regardless if they lacked anything like the photo ID that was supposed to be used, the proof of residency, and several other key forms of needing to know, you need stuff there. But they said that there is no way that that they're going to get in the way of somebody's voice being heard because they didn't it's just, you can't, if you go in there and try to get a driver's license under the normal circumstances without all those forms of ID that's required, you don't get a driver's license. And so anyways, it's weird. They said, well, we could go into days about the whole thing, but regardless, it's really important to have a secure election. And it's almost like they're giving a green light do weird stuff in elections. That's all I'm saying. If the Supreme Court rules, well, we're going to count them anyways. It's just we're just a green light, because we're not going to take anybody's voice. Basically, we're not going to ruin somebody's game. That's what it sounds like to me. Because anybody doing things the right way, knowing good and well they have 2 years, 4 years, depending upon elections, whatever's going on, to have that stuff ready so that you can have your voice heard. Because it's required so that you have a real. Because if you don't, then your voice gets nullified by something that's not right. So technically, that's no. Imagine all the people who wanted their voices heard in a legitimate way, but can't now because they're allowing this to happen, whatever that is. That's strange, but they won't let them check the proof of these 65,000 ballots. Although there's a strong possibility now, because it was such a small margin of victory for Riggs, who's on the right here, and Jefferson on the left, who's contesting what's going on because they found out what was happening. He will more than likely overturn this and be in this seat, which would be a great thing because maybe they can fix some of the problems that's going on with this. If these laws are, say for instance, if our Republican Congress in North Carolina actually brings these to the table, the Supreme Court will be in favor of these. That's normal. It's law. Okay, so let me read you the article so you'll see where I'm coming from, and then we'll move on to the thing with that dude who did that thing to that teenager with that thing, and I'd be careful how to word more words. Here we go. Reading from the stated article here, North Carolina Supreme Court Friday ruled that most of the 65,000 questionable ballots must count in the hotly contested election judicial race. Earlier this week, the North Carolina Supreme Court halted a previous order from the state appeals requiring the verification of 65,000 questionable ballots. This case has been bouncing around between state and federal courts. The North Carolina Supreme Court race headed for a recount due to a close final tally as the Democrat pulled ahead 2 weeks after the election day. 2 weeks, guys. So everybody's vote was in. Everybody's votes were counted except for just several and so you're like, well, what's the big deal with when it comes to Supreme Court seats? What difference does it make? Well, let me explain to you something here. They could really facilitate an unfair advantage when it comes to redistricting, when it comes to voting. Democrats tend to love to redistrict in their favor. They don't look at it from both sides, and they use questionable numbers and questionable tactics that gives them more seats and more power, even though it's not really there. This happens all the time. This is why it's very important to have a Supreme Court justice there that's actually fair. Democrats aren't fair. We've seen this play out many, many, many times. Republicans might be spineless, but at least we're kind of fair. So, anyways, Democratic incumbent Sarah Riggs closed the race with 2770, 818 votes, and challenger Jefferson Griffin's votes 2770, 193. Very small margin of victory. The race went to a recount since the difference was fewer than 10,000 votes. Republican Griffin was leading the race until all of a sudden Democrats overcame her opponent weeks after the election, guys. Weeks after the election. And it was alleged that there was serious questions as to the legitimacy behind those things. But anyway, so the North Carolina Supreme Court rules that most of those will be counted, and a 2-1 decision was authored by judges John Tyson and Fred Gore, both registered Republicans. Judge Tobias Hampson, a Democrat, dissented. It's pretty wild. So our Republican judges actually said, we're going to see how fair we are. We're so fair, we'll screw ourselves. And you had a Democrat that dissented is like, wait a minute. This is a good idea. Anyway, so we're actually seeing law play out in a very strange manner. Almost, that's a whole other video. But because the race was so close, even a small percentage of the questionable ballots are tossed out. It looks like there's a good chance that the Republican Supreme Court justice guy will probably win. Hopefully, and he won't be spineless like the other two we just seen. Got this thread. It's wild. So, Carmelo dude on the right, who did this horrible thing to this teenager on the left, which is no longer with us anymore, his public representative / attorney guy is like he's got multiple charges and been in trouble for all kind of wire fraud, money laundering, got ties to Antifa BLM, was actually in trouble for sparking a deadly rally against somebody else where people got harmed. This is crazy. So let's dig into this. This fella right here. this popped up in some of my feed, and I was like, I did some research, and apparently it's pretty legitimate. I think I haven't found anything debunking it yet. But okay, so you've got these people right here. Let me go to the thread now. I wanted you to see who this guy was. This guy's supposed to be this Carmelo guy's public representative slash attorney slash fundraiser slash crowd insider slash does really bad things. Okay, here we go. Watch this. Make sure we're good here. Yeah, okay, you can see that. All right, here we go. I'm digging into this. This is breaking exclusive corruption in Carmelo Anthony's defense and advocacy. Carmelo Anthony's newly hired attorney, Kim T. Cole, is a general counsel to the Next Generation Acting Network Foundation. It's called the NGAN. But this is a BLM supporting 501c3 that is based on a full investigation, has brought in 6 figures, yet has filed a total of only 2 IRS reports since its inception in 2014. And according to federal law, the 501c3s are required to file annual returns of their income and expenses with the Internal Revenue Service. Records also shows that the organization received a grant from another entity called Good Work Dallas, which with the same registered address, which can indicate alleged money laundering. Maybe. Allegedly. They have also reportedly opened a new 501c organizations 3 and 4 under slightly different names, and when their status is revoked for lack of financial filing or when pressure is placed on them to file, they start a new entity. This leaves room for money to disappear. This involves multiple federal EINs, state recognition, and missing entities in between the years that each 501c has begun. The fraudulent foundation is run and was founded by Dominique Alexander, and this is Carmelo Anthony's family advocate, and a known felon with a history of fraud, forgery, corruption, woman battery, and a conviction for child abuse. I hope that word gets by. All right. Dominique also has a history of provoking violent protesting, arriving at people's private homes to protest, and also intimidating jurors, too, by the way. Dominique also is responsible for the protests in Dallas that ended up with Micah Johnson's gunfire and 5 officers no longer with us anymore. Carmelo Anthony's newly hired attorney, Kim T. Cole, is also Dominique's attorney. In a recent press conference, Dominique Alexander spoke as Carmelo's advocate, stating that the bond was too high. Bond too high! Bond too high! He didn't do nothing! And defended the argument of self-defense. He said that Carmelo's family was dealing with the racism and bigotry. He stated this phrase about a dozen times, because repetition is where it's at. When asked about the knife carried by Carmelo, he justified Carmelo's right to hold the knife by comparing his case to Zimmerman and Kyle Rittenhouse. Okay? He then told a blatant falsehood and said that Austin Metcalf's brother said in a media interview that Carmelo Anthony told Austin, "Don't put your hands on me." But not only were those words never stated, but the arrest report relays that the exact words were, "Put your hands on me and see what happens." It was a threat. Okay, so the lie served to aggravate protesters, create a narrative to cause more divisiveness, and provoke more inflammatory racist behavior. And you can see the photo on the left of this Dominique Alexander, the photo on the right with Jasmine Crockett. Yeah, you're starting to see the pictures come together. Look at that. Huh. Now, I'm only going to state the obvious, guys. This was on school grounds. So, just to let you know, this all happened on school grounds. And at no school are they allowed to carry weapons, knives, firearms, anything, cannons, So the whole argument is thrown out the window when they say, well, why was he having a knife at school? Why was he having a knife on these school grounds? And he was also in a restricted area, too, by the way, that was supposed to not have people there. That was the whole thing. There's a lot more to the story that's being talked about, that's not being talked about. I'm speaking it up. But you see Jasmine Crockett standing with these evil, corrupt people. Yes, all wearing their face masks to let them know, signifying to the big machine who they're working for, that they're all in. But this is very alarming, because this is what we're at. We're up against a lot, guys. We as in just society. I really want this information to get out. Probably should have done this at the beginning, but hopefully people stuck around and watched. If not, get the word out. Share this video and tell them watch the last half, because this is an epic case. This is the new George Floyd, but in a very inverted manner. Do you remember, real quick, do you remember whenever they had, when they acquitted O.J. Simpson? And it was, and you know, there's actually a possibility O.J. Simpson was innocent, but that's a whole other video. If you look into what his son was into and all that stuff. But anyhow, he might have took the rap for his son. But regardless, when they asked why they said O.J. Simpson was innocent while the juries went that route, it's because they said because of what happened to Rodney King. So if they get the right juries and the right people, which they will do everything in their power to do so, and scream and holler anti-Semitic values so that they can get what they want, they're going to justify this ruling in favor of what happened to George Floyd, even though that guy got convicted, whatever. They'll figure out a way to put it all together and then hate white people at the end of the day. By the way, we're not a majority. Run the numbers. There's not as many white people as people think. So anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Have a good one, and keep your eyes on a swivel. Or, yeah, something. All right, bye.